Welcome to our webinar today, How to Feel Energy. Today we're going to delve into feeling energy, seeing energy, what it means, how to pick up energy, how to interpret it. And it's such a huge subject, like feeling energy, working with energy, seeing energy, experiencing energy in regards to healing, psychic abilities, all of it. It's such a big kind of thing to unravel. And somebody asked last week if we could do a webinar this week on feeling energy, and so this is the birth of talking about this. I think it's a great subject to jump into, and as I said, there's a lot in it, but we'll see how we can unravel it. So welcome today. Thank you everyone for joining, those on Zoom and also who will watch later. So our first question is, like, again, how can we feel energy? And I'll just start with my first experience of it was, I think in terms of energy, like, we know so little about the body and we know so little about what the body is capable of. That's the kind of first way I'll always start, which is like in all that we know. And I think that, we're pretty amazing in how much we learn and discover and study, but there's so much to the human being, the human mind, the consciousness, the unconsciousness, the energy field, the chakras, the organs of the body. As much as we know so much, there's so much that we don't know. And that kind of started for me really when this kind of idea of like how little we know was when I first had my treatment of bioenergy healing. I had somebody working on me doing bioenergy healing session. I've shared this story many times, right? So it's not a new story, but it was, the importance of this is so significant, at least for me, because it's what started a career in healing like 30 years ago, and I'm still on the same path from a specific moment of impact, let's say. And that moment was, I was receiving healing with a group of people in bioenergy healing over maybe 31 or so years ago. I was receiving a treatment, and this girl was working on me, and she asked me what I wanted treatment for, and I told her I had asthma and eczema, and she didn't ask me too much about it, just like how long I had it and stuff. And I mentioned I was on inhalers and I was on creams for the eczema and inhalers for the asthma. And she just got in and started working on me. And, my first impression of the bioenergy was it was very strange. It was very weird. There was people like receiving healing. And as they were receiving the healing in this non-touch, non-physical therapy, like people were moving all over the place. Like it really looked like people were hypnotized or on drugs or something. Like, again, this is like over 30 years ago, and in Ireland it looked like pretty out there. It was definitely on the fringe, right? But I often mention, like, I had done the whole medical route, nothing had worked. I decided I would go and I would have this healing done because people who had asthma and people who had eczema said they got better. And so when I first had my first experience of bioenergy, when I first had it, was this girl was working on me. And as she was working on me, after a few moments, she started massaging my backside. Like she was literally massaging my arse. And it was really weird because it's a hands-off treatment. So no one else is getting their arse massage. It was just me. I don't know if I was the lucky one or something, but it was just me, right? And so I was a lot younger than I am now. And I felt like a little embarrassed. Here's this girl massaging my backside, like in a room full of people. And after a moment, like I was getting very red, very hot, very bothered. And sorry, I'm just adding people here. And getting very hot and bothered. And so I turned around to give her the look, the look of like, why are you massaging my arse? And when I turned around, I realized she wasn't touching me. She wasn't touching me. And she was just turning her hand around, and she was standing behind me, and she was turning her hand around. And when I turned around, I saw that she wasn't touching me, but I felt like she was massaging me. In that moment right there, I knew this energy stuff was real. You know, that was the let's say the moment of impact. It was a moment of like, wow, like how could I feel something like this? And for me it was like well, I guess it was like a massage, but it was like a pressure. It was like a feeling, like a pressure, like something like massaging or touching me. And you know, in terms of like from there, 30 years later, working with thousands of people, we all kind of go through different experiences when we open up to energy, when we go to work with energy. And there's a full range between feeling energy, seeing energy, hearing energy. That's even a thing as well. To some people don't feel anything at all. Some people don't see any energy at all. Some people come into training and they feel everything. Other people come into training and they feel nothing. The people they're working on might feel everything, and then other people they're working on feel nothing. So there's a whole range of different kind of experiences that come into it. And so my goal tonight was to kind of like break it down a little bit and give you some kind of like understanding into what happens behind feeling and seeing and experiencing energy. So the first part I would start with is that, like I said, we're not just physical beings, right? Like, of course, we've got a physical body, and it's, you know, sometimes you hear people say the body is an illusion. You know, well, that's not very nice to your body. You know, people love the body's not real. It's just an illusion. Well, you know, your body's very much real. It's very physical. It's very here, and it's very tangible, you know, and it's very alive. We're most definitely real and here. But in terms of like how we perceive the body and how we perceive our life, there's a bit of an illusion around that. So it's like, you know, when we take the physical body and we take the cells, we put it under a powerful electron microscope, you find that the body is more empty space than it is physical. Not to say that the body isn't real, it's just that it's more energy and space, electricity and magnetism, potential energy. It's all of these things more than it is just physical. So in terms of the physical body is about 15% of us. It's about 15% of who and what we are. And then there's another 85% out around us. And this 85% we call the biofield, the electromagnetic biofield of the body. And this biofield relates to all the organs, tissue, cells, blood, bones through different energy points. And it also stores the emotional and the mental warehouse. It's kind of like the blueprint of the body, telling the body, printing the body, how the body should work and how the body should function. So in terms of this biofield, this electromagnetic field that is part of who and what we are, sometimes that field can be felt, like we can feel like tingling sensations in our body, static energy moving. We can get like full-on electric shocks. You can feel your energy body being pulled around. You can feel it being pushed. You can feel pressure on your body, very much like a magnetism. And even though sometimes people think, well, how do you feel energy in a kind of like, how can you actually feel energy? I sometimes relate it back to like just like magnets, right? So we got a couple of magnets here, and if I turn these magnets around and I go to push them together, they just will not go together. There's a pressure that as I bring the magnets together, there's a force that's preventing them from coming together, right? And so sometimes, like in energy, when we're working with energy, there's a force that prevents the energy from going further. And that if you go too much, it like pushes the energy. And then in another way, working with energy, so just as we have the pushing apart, we have the pulling together. So even if I try not to bring the magnets together, there's a certain point where they just kind of jump together. They're like, there's a magnetism that is pulling them together. Well, in the same way with energy, sometimes like when we're pulling energy out of the body, when we're drawing energy out of the body, literally the person will come with their energy. So as we're pulling energy out of someone's body, it literally pulls the person too. And so we'll unravel all of that. But the first thing is there's different sensations that you can feel. Tingling sensations. It can feel like sand is running through your fingers. So, you know, when you're at the beach and you pick up sand in your hands, you can feel it like sand running through your fingers. Probably the most common thing, like, well, here, let me put it another way. Sometimes like a client will come in and you're working on a client, right? And you're working on the client and you can feel, as a practitioner, you can feel the energy moving through their body. Like, and it can be pretty intense at times. And you can feel energy moving through the person's body. And then you ask the client, you know, can you feel the energy? And they're like, no. And you're just like amazed because you're like, it's really intense right now going to their body. And when I first kind of like did that and I said, like, can you feel that? You know, and they're like, no. And then I said, well, I didn't understand what I was asking, I think, in the beginning. And then what I learned was like, I'd ask the person, hey, can you feel like the tingling sensations as I'm coming down your arm? And they're like, yes. I'm like, and I'd say like, hey, can you feel the cold? Can you feel cold in your body right now? And they're like, yeah, it's freezing. Like, can you feel heat? Yeah, and they could feel the heat. So like sometimes people would feel heat, they would feel cold, they would feel tingling sensations, they would feel their body pulling. And if I said, but do you feel energy? They're like, no. And I realize there's a misunderstanding or miscommunication about what energy is, right? Like when you say, hey, can you feel energy? They're like, no. And yet they can feel there's heat building up in their body where your hands are, or they're freezing in a particular part of their body, or their energy, their physical body is being pulled, you know. And so then I learned really that there's a language that comes with the energy. It's also like we call it the subtle energy field, right? So the energy is very subtle, it's very gentle. So it's not like, you know, when I'm drawing someone's energy and they start to move with it, it's not that they can't resist it. A person could like stand and prevent themselves and resist it. But if people like surrender, relax, and let go, they can literally just feel the energy moving through them. People can feel energy pulling them backwards or pulling them forwards. Now, if you're looking at that, just as I remember when I saw it for the first time, I literally thought people were making it up. I'm like, there's no way this is real. How is that possible? And I mean, over the years, I've done like all kinds of stuff where I blindfolded people and then I pulled the energy so that they couldn't see what I was doing. And I could move them around the room with blindfolds on. And I'm like, it works the same way. And I even thought, well, I wonder what's like, you know, could you pull the energy of someone through a wall? And one time we're doing a level 3 bioenergy training in Scotland, and we're in a big old house, like a castle, and the walls were like they're like 4 foot wide. The walls are enormous in this like old castle up in Glasgow. And I just went to the other side of the wall and there was a person standing there, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to see if I can move their energy, if I can connect in with their energy on the other side of the wall. And when I went to, I kind of maybe connected a little bit too strong because I was thinking how thick the wall was. And I heard this big gasp from the other room, and I ran in to see what had happened. And the person was lying on top of about 30 people that were that were witnessing it, they got pulled right over, and I had pulled the energy too strong. And I realized, wow, there's this, we have this capacity not just to move energy, but like it can move the physical body as well. Like the body can move with the energy if the person's not resisting. If the person is not in the way, they can literally feel the energy. And that kind of opens up the whole idea of even like distant healing, that you can work on someone from, you know, from Canada to Japan, or Canada to Australia, or, you know, sometimes I work Canada to Ireland, and you're working from all these distances, and the distance doesn't even matter. The walls don't matter. It's just the waves of energy go through it all, you know. It's pretty kind of powerful and magical in that way. So in terms of like feeling energy, there's two kind of main things that as practitioners that I train practitioners on, and it kind of starts with energy is either blocked or energy is flowing. You know, so I kind of bring it all back to that, like make it really, really simple. And in terms of energy blocked or energy flowing, the understanding of energy healing, whether it's specifically bioenergy, but I think most energy healings understand this concept. If the energy is flowing freely through your body, you're healthy. And if your energy keeps getting blocked or clogged or congested in your body or stuck, over time you get sick. And that's a very fundamental principle of energy healing. It's kind of like no different than a traffic jam, no different than a river flowing. I always use the concept of the river flowing. Like you don't make the river flow. That's just what the river does. But if something blocks the river from flowing, then the river won't flow. And it doesn't matter how long the blockage is there. As soon as you take the blockage away from the river will start flowing again. It doesn't matter if it stopped flowing for a year, 10 years, 20 years. Like as soon as you take the blockage away from the river will flow. And because that's the nature of it. So for us, you know, when it comes to health and well-being, when the energy is flowing freely through the 85% of us, we tend to be healthy. We tend to be well. And when the energy is blocked, congested, or stuck in the energy field, or we might have, you know, we could have trauma from past experiences. We could have events that have taken place or that have happened that have caused very specific stagnation in the energy field. Or like, I mean, even a car accident, you know, there's people, I treat people with back pain all the time who maybe were in a car accident 10 years ago. And even though their whole body is renewing and healing itself, they still have the back pain 10 years later. Now, if your body is renewing itself and replenishing itself and healing itself, why are people sick 10 years later? And the answer to that is very much that there's a trauma happened around the accident. Now, most people think that trauma is physical. In my experience, the trauma is very seldom physical. It's always emotional. So when after the accident, the person is still holding on to maybe blame or like stuck emotion, right? So it's not that the physical body stays stuck. The physical body is renewing itself, but the emotion gets stuck. And so when someone, maybe they're angry at the fact that someone drove through a red light and crashed into them. Maybe they're angry at the fact that they're not able to work anymore. So the emotion gets stuck. And that's why the emotion gets held in the blueprint in the biofield. And even though the body is renewing itself and healing itself, the body keeps imprinting the illness or the sickness or the pain year after year after year, because the mold is imprinted with that trauma. And so unless that's released from the field of energy, then it keeps imprinting itself back into the body. So in terms of feeling energy, the two main ways for practitioners is your feeling energy is blocked or your feeling energy is flowing. And if we're to break that down, like I said, the first principle to understand is if energy is flowing, everything's okay. If energy is flowing, it's all good. It's brilliant. Now, if energy gets blocked, if the energy feels like it's not flowing, now you got some challenges. So blocked energy can kind of generally mean two main things. So blocked energy means the energy is either excessive or deficient. So people often ask me, like, what does heat mean in the energy field, and what does cold mean in the energy field? And people always want to know, what does this feeling mean? And I'm always a little bit like vague to say exactly what it means, because it can actually mean different things. But if I really have to put a kind of label on it and say this means that, generally heat will mean more of an excess in the energy field, right? So just like a traffic jam, when you get a traffic jam, you're going to have more like people beeping their horns, their blood pressure's raising, they're getting agitated, they're getting frustrated in the traffic jam. So the energy is rising, the heat is increasing. In the same way, like when there's blocked energy in the body, the energy is not fully flowing freely. That blocked energy starts to build up. It starts to create pressure and frustration in the energy field. It creates more what we call yang energy, which is the heating system. So the yang energy is a little bit more on the male energy, and it's the yang, it's the heating system of the body. And so the heating system is heating up. But it's really important that the heating system and the cooling system work together, kind of like a car, right? You've got your engine, but you've also got the radiator to cool it down. And so we've got a heating system in the body, and we have a cooling system in the body. So the yang energy is the heating system, the yin energy is the cooling system. So if we get like a blockage with too much energy, like too much heat, that's like an excessive energy. But then we can also get the opposite, which is we can also call it a blockage, is when there's a deficiency, when there's too much cold, when the energy is not flowing enough. So just as energy can flow too much, but energy can also not flow enough, right? Now, sometimes people think like if energy flows a lot, that's a lot of energy moving. But sometimes like a lot of energy flowing actually doesn't mean there's much energy moving. You often see that with people with chronic fatigue. People with chronic fatigue tend to have a lot of energy, right? Now, your first thought is, no, people with chronic fatigue have no energy. They have a lot of energy in their body. There's just nowhere for the energy to move. Again, it's like the traffic jam. It's not that they don't have energy. They have lots of energy. It's just there's nowhere for the energy to go. It's congested, right? So in terms of excess energy, too much energy moving through the body doesn't mean that the energy is going really fast. It can mean that it's actually blocked. It's actually not flowing at all. So now you get to deficiency, which is when energy is not flowing well in the body. So you could have a particular area in your body where your energy is not flowing very well. The energy could be very low in that area. So in terms of the body, we generally break the body down into 7 segments. And these correspond with the 7 major glands of the body. And in BioEnergy, we call them the 7 major chakras of the body. So from the root to the sacral, to the solar plexus, to the heart, the throat, the brow, the crown, they just represent the 7 areas of the body where there's greater electromagnetic energy in relation to the glands and the organs in that specific area. So if there's a deficiency in a particular chakra or a particular part of the body, it means the body's not getting enough energy in there. So in terms of energy, whether it's an excess or a deficiency, in some ways, it's really the same thing. It's blocked energy. The blocked energy isn't allowing the energy to flow through the body. And the solution in bioenergy, the solution is always the same. It's release the blocked energy. And when we clear energy out of the way, new energy flows in. The more energy we take out, the more new energy flows in. So whether the energy is stuck and we take it out, new energy flows in, or whether there's a deficiency, and by clearing the energy out, even in a deficiency, it stimulates more energy to flow. So either way, the solution is always the same. Clearing energy out increases the flow of energy in, right? So it creates space. It's all about, like, in terms of energy, it's all about creating space. The more space there is, the more energy can flow, you know? So even in terms of the deficiency, when you create space, it actually, like, you can't, in the energy field, you can't have a vacuum. So the more energy you move out, the more space you create, the more that space is filled up with new energy. So the more you take out, the more new energy comes in. The more you take out, more new energy comes in. And that's really, you know, as we break down healing, that's one of the ways in which healers are helping people's bodies to heal, because we're creating space in their body for the energy to flow. With this concept that when your energy is flowing freely through your body, you return to health naturally. No one has to, you don't have to push or force yourself to be healthy. Once your energy returns to free flowing motion and movement, your body starts to match that energy frequency and vibration. That your physical body is a reflection, the 15% of you is a reflection of the 85%. And so what's happening in the energy field on an emotional level, on a mental level, is showing up in the physical body. So in terms of how do you feel that in the energy field, you know, some people will feel it as heat, some people will feel it as cold. Some people will feel heat as the blockage of energy being excessive. Does that make sense? You know, some things that the energy is excessive, it's blocked, so you might feel heat, you know. Someone could be very deficient, you might feel it as cold, right? So in terms of, say someone's not speaking out for themselves very much, they're not standing up for themselves very much and not speaking out for themselves very much, they're less likely to have heat in their field, they're more likely to have cold. So they'll have a cold deficiency in the solar plexus, which is the power center, the fire center, right? So the fire is diminished. So there's more coldness, more yin energy in the body, right? The cooling, there's too much cooling in the system. And so then this makes the throat chakra more deficient. So when people have an excessive throat chakra, you even see it in their body language. Their throat is open and they lead conversations with the throat exposed, right? When people are deficient with their throat chakra, when they don't want to talk that much, they often have their chin down. Have you ever noticed that? They look down, their chin is down. I think we learned that in school, and we didn't want to be, you know, when a teacher wanted to ask us questions, we'd look down, close our throat chakra down, right? Like, you know. And the teacher, I always think like the teacher would look for the people that had their throat chakra down to kind of like choose who has to answer the questions. So in terms of like the energy field, you're opening up energy points in the body to bring the heat and cold back into balance, to reestablish the flow of energy like in the body as such. Now, so there's the practitioner working on someone and the feelings and sensations that you feel. And we'll go more into that in just a moment. And then there's the person receiving healing, receiving energy, and there's the feeling and sensations that they feel. So in the beginning, we said, you know, some people might feel heat or cold. They might feel their body being pulled around. You you never know when you go to work with people, you never know who is like super sensitive and who isn't. It's kind of like, it's really like, you can guess sometimes, but sometimes it really surprises. Like I'll get someone, many times I've had like, you know, a lovely like yoga teacher who's really in tune with their body and works with their energy. And I go to do bioenergy on them and they can't feel anything, you know. Or I get a qigong master, and the qigong master, like they're working with their qi, with their energy for, you know, 30-40 years, and I work and they don't feel their energy. And then I got to work on the, you know, it could be like a construction worker, someone who you just wouldn't imagine maybe, right, that they're sensitive to energy and they feel everything, you know, and you just never know. And then the next day you get a yoga teacher and they feel everything. You just, it's not about the job that the person has or their background. It's just some people are open energetically and some people are not as open energetically. Now, if someone is not as open energetically and maybe they don't feel the energy, like the heat or the cold or the pulling or the sensations, it actually still doesn't make that much difference to the outcome. Like there's so many people don't feel anything and their pain just disappears, or their arthritis clears up, or they their anxiety dissolves, and they're like, you know, I didn't actually feel that much when I was receiving it. And then you have other people who they feel everything, right? They feel when you're drawing the energy down their arm, they can feel the energy coming out their arm and out their fingers, and they can feel everything, you know. So, but sometimes like the more, like when people have their first session, they might not feel as much. And then as they're having sessions, they relax and they surrender into it. And sometimes I think that's just because we're so used to just the physical body. We're so used to like everything is physical and tangible. And so after like a session or two, so I mean, sometimes it's even in the first session, but sometimes people are amazed that like that they actually can feel energy. And even though like it's subtle energy field, we say it's a subtle energy field, sometimes people are amazed at how much they can actually feel. And when we relax, like you can actually really feel your body's energy. You can feel energy moving through your body. You can experience energy in multiple ways. And although it's very subtle and it's very gentle, it's there to be felt. Sometimes people feel pain being pulled out of their body. Often people with neuropathy will literally feel like the sensations coming back into their hands, you know, as the blocked energy is being pulled out. So it can be pretty amazing in that way. But I think one of the nice things when people actually feel energy is that we often have these like ideas about the body and how the body works and about life and about how life works. And there's something really magical when you go to do a healing on someone and they just feel the energy flowing through them. There's something that happens in their brain that I think it's just like their brain is like being like up leveled. It's almost like they're remembering that their energy, they're remembering the other 85%, and they're remembering that there's more than just the physical. And why that's so important is because if we've spent our whole life just focused on the physical and the this is the physical body, and I need physical work on my physical body. If we focus our life on that, we kind of fall into the limitations of that. But as we start to open up to the energy field, it's like we start to open up to another 85% of ourselves. We start to access healing in ways that we didn't even know that was available to us. And we start to remove the limitations of that energy. And so as people have sessions or as they receive sessions, usually their ability to feel energy just starts increasing and increasing with the sessions. And then sometimes people will start to get glimpses of the energy. So as well as feeling energy, you can often see energy. So seeing energy for people, probably the easiest bit to see. There's full auras, like which is seeing the full energy and full auras. And that's a little bit more complicated, but probably the easiest thing for most people with a little bit of practice is you can actually see the streams of energy coming out your fingers. And when you're working or healing with other people, you can actually see the energy between your hands and their body. And probably one of the best ways to see energy is against a black background. Often people try to see energy against a white background, and it's a little harder because the white is the full color of the spectrum. And when you're looking to see, a lot of times people will see their energy as white. So it's very hard to see white against white. But in terms of seeing the energy on a black background, you're able to perceive the white, and then you start to perceive actually the first layer that you start to see is red, which is the root chakra. So a lot of times when people like are looking at their hands with a black background, you actually start to see red. It's like smoke coming out of your fingers. And it's really cool. And especially like when you're doing healing, like when you're drawing energy out and you're looking at, it's like smoke coming out of your fingers to the person. And, you know, sometimes the person is being pulled back across the room as you're drawing the smoke out of their, maybe you're drawing it out of their lower back. You're drawing literally back pain out. And it looks like smoke, and they're being pulled along with it. It's really like quite magical, and quite like I said, this other whole world is opening up to us that maybe we never got to experience before. And that's the kind of the beauty of of energy, is that it kind of opens you up in different ways. But a little tip, if you'd like a little tip for seeing energy, well, like I said, the first one is just like looking at energy with a black background. If you're looking to look at energy, like don't move your hands in and out like this, because that just creates an optical illusion in your brain, right? So what you got to do is you have your hands together and you basically don't move them, and you relax your eyes as if you're looking down your nose, and then you'll start to see your auric field open up around your hands. And if you just slowly move your hands in and then very slowly move them out, you'll actually start to see the fingers connect, and you start to see the streams of energy flowing through your hands. And then for seeing energy around people, you can actually, again, if you relax your eyes and you look at, sometimes the easiest way to do it is kind of if you're looking at the back of someone's head. So you're looking at the back of someone's head, and you're looking like right at that point in the back of their head. And as you relax your eyes, it's like the auric field just opens up around them. And when the energy opens up around them, what's really weird is sometimes people will, if you haven't told them that this is what you're doing, they'll touch their back of their head when you're looking at the back of their head, you know. And sometimes it's really cool. Like if you're really like looking at the back of their head to see the energy, sometimes they turn around and look at you because they can actually feel your energy on the back of their head. You know, you can try it for yourself. It's really cool. You know, literally people can feel the you looking at them. There's an intuitive, they're picking up on that in the field, right? There's no separation. So in terms of like seeing energy, you can kind of look as if you're looking down your nose and you're looking that way and looking at the hands. In terms of feeling energy really as energy healers, as practitioners, like we have very specific techniques in bioenergy for developing feeling energy and working with energy in the bioenergy system. Like in level 1 bioenergy, we use it, our very first technique in bioenergy is called the opening scan. And the opening scan is opening up the body's energy field. And then at the last technique we do is the closing scan. So it's the same technique done at the end of the session, but kind of like not even that it's in reverse, it's just done at the beginning and it's done at the end. And probably the most important thing about that is, like, when it comes to energy healing, it's really important to have a beginning and an end. I mean, I've been teaching that to people for years. Like, it's really important to have good boundaries, right? So, like, there's a beginning to your treatment and there's an end to your treatment, so that you're managing your energy really well. And when it comes to like this particular technique that we use in bioenergy, the opening scan, we're using it for a couple of reasons. One, it marks the beginning of the session. So there's a boundary, right? We're not working on people until we do the opening scan. So there's a very specific boundary. Then what we're doing is we're communicating to the energy system that we're opening up the 7 chakras. We're opening up the body for healing. So we're letting the body know through the specific technique that we're opening up the body for healing, that this is the beginning of the treatment, inviting the body to open. And then the third part of the opening scan is that it's actually scanning the chakras. So you're scanning the energy field, you're scanning each of the chakras to feel if the energy is blocked or if the energy is flowing. And with practice makes permanent, you know. But with practice, you can develop the ability to be able to scan a person's energy field and find where the energy is flowing and where the energy is blocked. But at the same time as that, you know, when people are learning bioenergy for the first time, or learning any healing modality, the practice part and the feeling energy is really the second level, right? First level is knowledge, right? So the first level of working with energy is knowledge. So like if someone said, you know, I have a problem with my digestive system. Well, you know, you should have the knowledge that the digestive system is related to the solar plexus chakra, and that's the area that you're going to work on. And in the beginning, you don't need to feel energy to work on someone's energy. You don't need to know what chakra is blocked. You can have the knowledge to know, right? If you learn, and you learn professionally, right? Like that's why we teach energy healing in levels, in courses for people, so that you can break it down and you can learn it. So some people say, well, you know, Michael, I don't know if I can work with energy. I can't feel it. Well, the first level, you don't need to feel energy to work with it. You practice through knowledge, and then as you practice and practice, you have to earn feeling energy. I mean, I've met people who've worked with energy for years, and they said, you know, oh, I don't feel the energy. It's like, yeah, it's like, well, how many sessions have you done over those years? And they're like, well, maybe about a dozen. I'm like, that's not a lot. That's not a lot of work, you know. It's kind of like if you're playing the piano, right? And you just sat down at the piano 12 times over a couple of years, and you're like, oh, I'm not that good. No, I mean, people who develop working with energy, getting really good at working with energy, helping people get rid of their back pain, their arthritis, their migraine, they're practicing every day, right? People who get good working with energy, and it's no different than anything else, than a sport, than music. You have to practice every day. And so when it comes to energy healing, it's like, you know, people can have a natural ability. Some people have a natural ability to feel energy. They'll feel everything. They have a natural ability for it, right? But you still have to practice and develop the skills so that you're able to clear pain out of the body and get the energy flowing again. You could have a natural ability, but without any learning, then sometimes people, they're helping other people get better, but they're picking up everyone else's blockages. Well, that's not so good for you. It's nice for the person, but not so good for you. So developing your feeling of energy is really the stage 2. The first level is kind of knowledge, learning about how the energy flows, learning the techniques. You really got to like learn specific techniques to get the energy working, and you're really practicing and developing those. Then the second level in terms of bioenergy, the second level is practitioner level. And the second level is you're really practicing the techniques thousands and thousands of times. you're working on people, you know, you're doing the same techniques over and over, thousands of times. You're mastering the techniques, you're mastering working with the energy. You're mastering it so much that when you do the technique, the energy moves. You don't even have to think about it. It's kind of like martial arts, you know, it's like, if you're doing martial arts, you wouldn't learn a technique like once and forget about it. Like, you learn it and then you practice it, and you practice it for years, and you practice it so much that you're able to do it without thinking about it. You know, so like in martial arts, the idea is like someone goes to hit you and you just move out of the way. It's reflective, like a reflex. It's just like you just do it, right? It's not, you know, oh, I better move out of the way, someone's going to hit me. Healing works in the same way. When you get so good at doing the healing, you're just automatically identifying blockages, releasing them out of the energy field. You're experiencing energy without even thinking about it. You know, I'll often have conversations with people while I'm working with the energy, and I'm feeling the energy and working with the energy, but I'm able to talk at the same time, because it's just like when you do it so much, it's just like, if you're learning to drive, you probably don't want to talk and learn to drive at the same time. But after you've learned to drive, you know, you're able to have conversations while you're driving, right? So it's all it is just like practice and development, practice and development. So when you're able to like develop it to the point that it's integrated into your body, then you're able to reach that point where now you're actually feeling the energy, you're working with the energy. In terms of feeling energy, picking up energy, working with energy, I always advise, you know, people, like, rather than me like telling people what I'm picking up or feeling in the field, it's more like I kind of like the idea of I never kind of want to put like too many like thoughts or ideas into people, and it's more like allowing people to answer themselves, like, what is it that they're experiencing, or what is it that they're feeling, or how was the treatment for them. And sometimes I just use what they're saying as a measure, like let me put, how would I say it, like, so say I'm working with the energy, and I could maybe feel like their energy, the blockages are very close to their body, as opposed to the blockages are further out. So when blockages are closer to their body, I tend to find like that it relates more to like their family or relationships. Now, if it's family, it tends to be more around the back area of the heart. And if it's relationship, it tends to be more around the front area of the heart. At the same time, we're often dealing with things that are coming up in our life more like now and in the present, tends to be more at the front of the body, and things that are from the past tend to come up more at the back of the body. When things come up more in the solar plexus, it tends to be more around like work issues. So the solar plexus, the stomach area, tends to relate more to the work kind of relationships, versus like if blockages of energy come up around the heart, it tends to be more like romantic relationships or family relationships. If there's kind of like, I'm just kind of giving you a sense of like how I might pick up things. So like if I pick up a block in and around the heart, if a blockage is like very physical, like it will feel very heavy, very dense, right? Like it's really in a dense layer of the energetic field. So when it's very dense or heavy, there's probably a sign that may now actually be on a physical level. But if it's not as dense, maybe it's more emotional. I'll often feel that as like it's more like sticky. So it's like water, right? Like emotion. It's like it's more like sticky, versus if it's physical, it's more heavy and dense. So the emotion is more like fluid, more like kind of like sticky fingers, as if you got like something stuck on your hands. And so the emotional energy is a little bit more like more sticky. And so sometimes I'll get like that emotional energy, and then I get it like maybe it's very warm. Now, if it's warm, I might like, this is where now I'm moving from the knowledge of the body. So the knowledge of the body is telling me what chakras to work on, what energy points to work on. But the intuition is sometimes telling me what it relates to and when the blockage is there and when the blockage is gone. So the intuition can kind of guide me in that way. So like as an example, the intuition part might say, the heat that I'm feeling could relate to like a man in the person's life. And if I'm feeling a lot of coldness, that could relate to a woman in the person's life. Now, if it's very close to the heart, it could be a family member or a loved one, you know. And if it's like maybe a yin energy and it's more around the stomach, it could be a woman in relation to work. If it's yang energy in relation to the stomach, it could be a man in relation to work. So like as you start to, this is kind of like we're moving now level 2, level 3 into training. This is kind of like going like really another level of like coaching and understanding. In kind of more like level 3s, we kind of like level 1, you're just getting the techniques. Level 2, you're learning to really work with the energy. It's kind of like you lose the techniques and you learn to work with energy. And then level 3, you're learning to integrate that energy, learn to understand it and integrate it on another whole level. But in terms of like the feeling, so sometimes I'll feel like the heat is more like the masculine. It could be the person's father, and there could be like there's something that they're working through. There's something that's stuck in relation to their father. So like I don't always say what I know, but I generally kind of get a feeling of like when I do say something, I'll know I'm kind of spot on. And I might say something like, you know, sometimes it blows people's mind. I might just come out and say like, are you having trouble with your father right now? Has there been a breakdown in communication and you're not speaking with them at the moment? And the person looks at me like, how on earth did you know that? And it's really just because within the energy field, I felt a blockage of energy that was close to the body. So now I know it's family or it's relationship. And then I felt it was like their throat also had a blockage of energy in it. So now I know that there's a breakdown in communication. And then from the temperature of the blockage, now I know it's a male versus a female. And then the intuition, the last part was really just kind of putting it together of like that the way the energy was showing up, maybe it's even in the shoulder. It's like they're taking on too much responsibility, you know, and on the masculine energy versus the feminine energy. And it's just like, it's more at the back of the body. So it's just enough that it's more of a family member than a relationship. And there's little ways that you kind of like feel into this. But in any case, like when you have the knowledge and someone says, look, I'm having problems with communication. Well, you can work on the throat chakra. I'm having problems with the heart, right? Well, you can work on the heart chakra. So you can work on the body through having the knowledge and the techniques, but you can also kind of get to places through intuition that you know, you can use that intuition, that guide as a kind of as another reference, right? You know, which can be really cool at times, right? In terms of how we feel energy, say in bioenergy, one is, like I said, you know, it's scanning with your hands, and the hands are really like they're the magnets of, you can feel energy pulling or pushing. So, you know, just like the magnets, you know, like with the magnets here, they're pushing apart, you know. So when I'm in someone's energy field, if it pushes back at me, that gives me a sensation. If it pulls me towards it, that gives me a sensation. If you put your hand over a stove that's on, you're going to feel heat. Even if your oven is on, right? Say you don't have the stove on, but your oven is on. You're going to feel the heat of the oven when you put your hand over, right? It's very subtle. It might not be that hot, but you can feel a change in temperature. Does that make sense? Right? In energy, like when we're working with energy with our hands, sometimes you feel this change of temperature. Sometimes it's warm and sometimes it's cold. And here's a really good one, is sometimes the energy goes freezing cold. Like it literally goes freezing. And people always ask me, Michael, what does it mean when the energy goes freezing cold? Because that's a really common thing that happens. And what it means is you're really accessing past trauma. You're actually going into really old energy. Like it's like you're going back in time. You're going back to when the energy first got blocked. So that is actually a really good sign in a healing session when people get really cold or freezing. It's actually a really good sign because you're unraveling the person back to when the blockage first took place. Now, why is it freezing cold? Well, you can imagine like when someone has a trauma, like even if they're in a car crash, right? Like if you're in a car crash and a car's coming at you and you're not able to avoid it, there's a part of you that even though you're prepared for the impact, there's a part of you that just like emotionally shuts down, right? Like, and it's not from the car actually hitting your car and you getting thrown around. There's an emotional impact that takes place without the car actually hitting your car. It's the fear of the car hitting your car, right? So the fear freezes your energy field. Does that make sense? So in the like sympathetic nervous system, we have fight, flight, or freeze, right? So you're going to fight, or you're going to flight, or you're going to freeze. And it's really common that we freeze in trauma. So when we get a shock, we freeze and that gets locked in. And so when healing is unraveling the body, it's not uncommon that people will actually feel their body really cold when they're healing, and then after they'll start to feel warm again. And that's the movement and circulation of energy. So generally when we feel heat in the body after the cold, now the energy is starting to move and circulate. And so it's just like the body is starting to function again in the proper way. And then another tip in terms of feeling energy, and this is kind of like to practitioners out there who are practicing, maybe you know this, maybe you forgot this, but this is kind of a really good tip, is one of the ways when you're working with energy to feel energy is when you're releasing the energy. So you're releasing or letting go of the energy. When you clear your hands, you're really just on a very subtle level tuning into, are your hands heavy? Are your hands sticky? Or are your hands smooth? And when you're clearing energy away from a person and your hands are smooth, it means the energy is flowing freely, right? And if your hands are sticky, it means there's emotional blockages in their biofield in relation to that specific chakra. And if the energy is very heavy, and you're drawing energy out of a chakra and it's very heavy when you clear your hands, then it can mean that there's a physical problem in that chakra. They might actually have a pain there. There might be, like if it's the stomach, it could be an ulcer, there could be something physical or tangible there. In terms of like illness, we don't diagnose illness, I mean, in bioenergy, but it's not to say that sometimes I've said to someone, look, I think you should go to the hospital and get checked out, or at least go to your doctor and get your body checked out. And they're like, well, why? I'm not like having any major problems. And it's like, if I find a very heavy blockage in a person's energy field and I clear it over a couple of weeks and it's just not clearing, I've sometimes just asked the person, look, just go and get a checkup just to be sure. And then the person gets a checkup and it turns out that they have, maybe they have a huge cyst in their body, or they have an ulcer, and it's just like, sometimes it's just really big, and it's like, it's past the point where it's turned around and they actually sometimes people need medical treatment. But in very positive cases, just being able to feel that before it, sometimes doctors are like, well, how did you know it was there, right? Because it's you're picking up stuff in the field before the person is even experiencing it. So I think, like, as we start to, let's come full circle now, right? We're physical people. Yeah, beautiful, amazing physical people with these amazing energy fields, biofields around all of us. And as we kind of like, when we stop like so caught up in the outer world, the ecosystem, and we start returning back to the ecosystem of body, mind, and spirit, returning to living in harmony with nature, living with the land, not on the land. We live with the land. We're living with our body, right? That our body is not an illusion to bypass spiritually. Our body needs to be nourished and loved with healthy food, to be taken care of with sleep and water and love and care. Like we need to take care of our body. And in terms of the body, there's not just this physical body, but there's this energetic body. And when we start to feel in and tune into ourselves, when we start to like really take the time to meditate, to tune in, to have energy work done on ourselves, you can eliminate a lot of illness and sickness long before like it really becomes a point where you're having trouble turning it around. Like, most people only seek help, with doctors and healers and massage and physio after they have problems, right? Like it's kind of like bringing your car, to the dealer when it's broke down, right? Like it's a lot more work, like, to get it fixed when it's broke down. And so it's kind of like shifting the mentality to like, well, what if we start taking care of ourselves? What if we start managing our energy and our mind and our heart? And what if we start like releasing these trapped emotions? And what if we start tuning into our energy field and our biofield, and we start practicing feeling our own energy and getting energy flowing and moving? What if we started coming into harmony with nature, with the elements, the earth, the water, the fire, and air? They're not just out in nature, they're inside of us. Most people are totally unaware of the elements that are inside their own body. So just as the fire is the heating system, water is the cooling system. If your fire is out of balance or your water is out of balance, you're going to get sick. You're going to get ill, But if we can bring our water and our fire into balance, if we can learn to tune into the body, if we take the time to learn it, just like we take the time to learn anything, we can actually eliminate potentially hundreds of illnesses and sicknesses from the body. And we can maintain health and well-being in the body in a natural way, right? And that's the return of the ecosystem, right? The return of the ecosystem, returning back to health. Last week and the week before, we're talking about like returning our diets back to natural foods, right? We've gone so far into processed foods that it's like we're returning our diets, but like everything goes full circle, doesn't it? Like we've gone so far away from eating real food into processed food that now we're returning to eating real food again. I mean, we call it organic food. At one point, we used to call it just food. Now we have to call it organic food to just simply say it's not as processed, right? So we're returning, like we've gone out of balance and now we're returning back to our balance. And so I don't know, the feeling energy, the seeing energy, I hope you've had some insights today. I hope you've gotten something for it. I tried to kind of give something for whether you're already a practitioner, to give you some kind of tips and insights into feeling and seeing energy. If you've never worked with energy before, if you're interested in energy, I've hoped I gave you some kind of insights into that today. If you're interested in learning about energy, we have a workshop, a level 1 bioenergy training coming up in Vancouver on the 11th and 12th of March. That's a really wonderful weekend of training to work with the first 12 techniques in bioenergy, and it just really opens up your energy field, and it's pretty magical weekend. You can check that out on our website. If you haven't taken any trainings, please check that out. It's also available online through the website at half price. And then we have level 2 practitioner training coming up in May. That would be May, I think it's around the 26th, starts in May. And that's that one is online through Zoom on Wednesdays. It's a really wonderful training. And there's something nice about the consistency of it every week. And then also in May, we have a level 3 bioenergy training coming up in Mexico. Now, whether you've taken level 1 and level 2 and you're interested in going to Mexico for some advanced training, that's a really awesome retreat at the beautiful Mar de Jade in Chicala in Mexico. Something to consider. Really magical, wonderful trainings, the level 3s there. And then in terms of just wrapping it up, next week we'll have another webinar. Please tune in. If you want to know anytime what is in the webinar, it's a little spontaneous, but it's generally the same day or the day before. What the webinar is going to be about is posted on my Instagram account. So Michael Dalton's BioEnergy on Instagram, and so that's that will kind of say what the webinar is going to be about that week. And then if you miss it, or you want to catch up, or you want to watch it again, it'll be on YouTube probably by the Friday. I kind of premiere it on the Friday, and you can watch it. I'm just going to stop recording now, but thank you everybody for tuning in now and later.